Good morning, it's 10 o'clock and we're starting the regular meeting of the Township of Frontenac Islands, calling it to order. And one counselor is on Zoom, and that Counselor Jablonski, but aside from that, we have quorum in present. We will begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are meeting on land that has been under the stewardship of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat for time immemorial. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet, live, and play on this land. And we thank all generations of Indigenous peoples from the past to the present who currently continue to extend the sharing of this land with us. We recognize and deeply appreciate their ongoing connection to this place. We also recognize the contributions of the Métis
to be doing a renovation, so we want to make sure that we
region their home, and who have both shaped and strengthened this community and our province and country as a whole. As settlers, this recognition of the contributions and ongoing importance of Indigenous peoples to the area must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities, and to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across our country. Now, is there any direct declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda.
Moved by Councillor Ackley, second by Deputy Mayor Saunders, that the November 12th, 2024 council meeting minutes be adopted as presented and or amended, and that the information items be received and flagged. If there's any information items that council wishes to speak to.
There's only one that has caught my eye, and that's the minister's letter on the additional residential units. I had a question regarding that. Is there anyone else with anything on the consent that would like to have put aside? Okay. I was hoping that our building inspector was here, but I'm sure our CEO may be able to answer this question, and that is there anything in our current zoning or building codes that will be impacted that we need to address regarding the additional units? In the minister's letter, it indicates that there needs to be goodwill by the community and municipalities and that towards it, and in particular building codes and that we have. And not, I know we follow the Ontario building code, but I don't know if there's anything that impacts us.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I will clarify with our chief building official. There's nothing to my knowledge, but I will verify that and get back to council.
Thank you very much. Okay.
If there's nothing further, there was no amendments to the November 12th council meeting minutes. All those in favor of adopting the minutes as presented and receiving the information items?
Carried. Now we're on to staff reports. Administrative staff report number AD 018-2024 MTO Wolf Island Ferry Service. And I'll hand that over to.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just get to the
No worries.
excuse me, report. So I prepared a report with respect to the Wolf Island Ferry Service 2-hour layover in the evening. I had a meeting with members of MTO, and they were seeking direction from the residents of Wolf Island as to what time frame best meets and suits the residents of Wolf Island. While they understand that not everyone will be happy with the time frame. Excuse me. So what I'm recommending is that we do a community consultation. We do in-person and virtual meetings to gather the feedback from the residents. We'll also do online and paper surveys to ensure that there's broad collaboration, and collaborate with the ferry operator to explore operational constraints and potential adjustments. I do know that there are two specific times that they require, and that's the 7 a.m. and 1900, as that is the shift change for them. So once we get all that information together, we'll review and analyze the input from the residents. And then staff will prepare a report back to council with recommendations that we can then send off to MTO.
Okay, so do we have a mover for this report?
Excuse me, yeah. Moved by Councillor Holton, second by Councillor Jablonski, that council receive the report regarding the Wolf Island Ferry Service and direct staff to undertake community consultation to gather resident input on the 2-hour layover period at night. And further, that staff report back to council with a summary of the resident feedback and proposed recommendations to address the identified concerns.
Okay, it's on the table for discussion. Councillor Ackley?
At this moment, the boat's broken, so this is, we're not gonna be able to move anything forward for now, right? But I really don't have much to say.
Okay, Councillor Saunders? Or Deputy Mayor Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. Tough question through you to Theo. Any idea on the timing of when, I guess the first step would be us getting the process out there? And when we might have a report prepared? Is this a month, 2 months, 3 months?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So I would suspect the meetings would occur in January, just because of the timing, being so close to Christmas here now. Hopefully with maybe a report to the February, council meeting. If not February, then it would be a March meeting.
Thank you. And again, evidence that MTO wants to work with us on issues, we just have to take a thoughtful approach. So thank you for the work on that.
Okay, Councillor Holton?
Yeah, I think it's great that MTO is willing to work with us on it and wants to hear one voice from us on what we would like. There is some confusion, or there was some confusion in the community that it was only 40 minutes needed. It's the regular time plus 40 minutes, so it's a 2-hour gap. And so it's just to put it where is the least inconvenient, I guess, would be the solution.
Okay. Councillor Jablonski? Unmute.
Yep, this takes a second sometimes. Thanks, Mayor. One fast question. I know the Wolfie 4 is out right now. I love the idea of actually having this 2-hour gap changed over in the evening. When, I guess, how much time do we have here before the 4 gets back? Any ideas about that, Vanessa?
Through you, Madam Mayor, with respect to the Wolf being back in the 4 being back in service, Councillor?
Correct.
No, not at this time. I'm not aware.
Okay. I like the idea of negotiating with MTO as a united voice, see if we can get rid of that 2-hour gap. Yes, it sounds good to me. Let's proceed.
Okay. And we've had an offer on that from skilled facilitator Stephanie Roy McCallum. And I think we should consider bringing her in for this consultation that, and I would hope that council would be present for the public consultation, but it could be led by her, and that to make sure that all the voices are heard. I will say this echoes back to previous councils when they were told that there was going to be one fewer trip and they had to pick a time. And that's how we ended up with the 10:30 to 12 o'clock to 1:30 layover times. And it was not the preferred choice or option of that council, but they were basically told they had to pick something. So I really appreciate the CAO is going to try to also negotiate how frequently this actually needs to occur. If it could occur perhaps on a Tuesday and a Wednesday rather than every day of the week, because I'm told that it's partly for Transport Canada training, as well as the pump out and the adding on of water, which quite frankly, the truck has to come to the island anyways to do it at the dock site. So they've done it in progress while it was on the boat before, and then turned around and did the dock site and then came back. So to me, that's something that they should be able to arrange. But the Transport Canada training, if it has to occur, how frequently does it really have to occur? And see if we can negotiate that down to 1 or 2 evenings of impact rather than every evening would be my suggestion on that. Councillor Holton.
My understanding is that the pumping of sewage and water is done at the dock in Kingston. They're still using connections there. The pumper truck that will come on, comes on to clean sludge out of the bilge. What I'm hearing from them is they need 2 hours to fuel it. So it's the fuel and they can't do it while it's got a smaller neck on it. It takes a long time to fuel it. So that's what I'm hearing, why they need the 2 hour gap.
Okay, so if we can get more accurate information from MTO, and if there's any way we can mitigate how frequently this has to occur, that would be helpful. And keeping in mind, this is unfortunately an issue that will impact Islanders. It is the regular time frame of 80 minutes plus an additional 40 minutes. That's how it works out in the end, basically. And if we can get that to a time frame that impacts the least amount of people, ideally after the 2 o'clock boat in the morning, the 2:20, I believe it is, the last boat, that'd be the best time, because then the boat's tied up anyways. But that brings along other questions. There's lots of questions around the ferry, so I do suggest we get Stephanie Roy McCallum, who has offered to facilitate services and has a good resume, to perhaps lead that piece to make sure that everyone's point is heard.
Okay, any further discussion?
Seeing, I'm checking on Jablonski, no, seeing none.
All those in favor? Motion carried.
Okay, next is administrative report AD 019-2024-2025 council meeting schedule.
Moved by Councillor Jablonski, second by Councillor Atley, the administration report number AD-019-24 regarding the 2025 council meeting schedule be received, and further that the council approved administration report AD 019-24 as presented, and support the recommendations for the 2025 council meeting schedule. So sorry, Madam Mayor, the only difference between our schedule from 2024 to 2025, we did, because we don't have the August meetings, we did 6 meetings on Wolf Island in 2024 and 5 on Howe. I'm just proposing to keep things even and equal, that we would do 6 here on Howe this year and 5 on Wolf. Same time, dates, and everything else remains the same.
Okay, so it's on the table. Councillor Ackley, any comments?
Oh, seems to work with me.
Councillor Saunders? Deputy Mayor Saunders?
Thank you. I guess it's more through Madam Mayor, Councillor Ackley. Last, in 2024, we changed the dates to accommodate your business hours.
Yeah.
This your hours.
Yeah, they made it the April, May here, so I can go back to work right away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Councillor Holtman?
No comments. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Councillor Jablonski?
Yeah, no comments, everything's straightforward, as Dan said.
Okay. I have comments that I would prefer the bulk of the meetings to occur on the island with the most residents, so that's Wolf. And I think that the more challenging time to get over from Wolf to Howe Island is also a concern, because it is more fraught with communication issues, even when they try to zoom in over here. So I would suggest that there should be I would suggest actually 7 meetings on Wolf and the remainder on Howe. And that I don't see it in the best interest of community consultation to have only 5 on Wolf on Howe. And I'll ask councillors again if they have any thoughts on that particular point. Councillor Ackley?
No, I'm just happy with the way the schedule is.
Councillor Saunders? Or Deputy Mayor Saunders? Councillor Holtman?
No, I mean, I think we have 2 islands. I think we have to split it up fairly.
Okay, actually, we have a dozen islands, but.
We have 2 islands that have council chambers, I should say then.
Okay. Councillor Jablonski?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I sort of like that it's evenly divided amongst the islands myself. I mean, it just spreads the proper meetings amongst both islands evenly. I like that idea.
At the request of Madam Mayor for a recorded vote, Councillor Ackley. Are you in support of the proposed, what I have presented?
Yes.
Councillor Holton,
Yes.
Councillor Jablonski,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Saunders,
Yes.
Mayor Greenwood Spears,
Nay.
motion is carried.
Okay, now we're on to admin report. Number AG 020-24. CAO report.
Moved by Councillor Holton, second by Councillor Ackley, that administration report number AD 020-24 be received for information. This is just a general overview for both the Howe and Wolf Island roads, waste, ferries, and a touch on the administration. So if any member has, council has a question, be pleased to answer.
Hey, Councillor Ackley.
No, it's pretty straightforward here.
Deputy Mayor Saunders.
Thank you, Manager. I do have a comment. One specific, and that's through you to the Chief Quinn. This fiber optic project that's going on, it's can you add any additional information for it in terms of when people might be expected to see it finished or connections and that stuff? Do you have any kind of timeline?
So, through you, Madam Mayor, in fact, the project is several weeks behind. They started to install some poles in areas where there were no poles. But beyond that, the group, it's called Tandem Group, have been in contact with us, but we believe they were here a few weeks back. I understand they've completed or almost completed Wolf Island, and then they're due to come here. So I wish I had more information, but I don't.
Okay,
And just overall comment, I think it's an excellent report. I think people need to understand the amount of that's gotten done. By the staff we have with this right now, I think we have very strong staff. I think this is an indication of kind of work in progress is being made. So thank you for the report.
hey, Councillor Holton.
I think it's a great report. It covers everything. Gets it out to the community. If anybody needs more information, they can contact us.
Hey, Councillor Jablonski.
Yep, I agree. A great report. No further comments.
Okay, I have a quick question. What I observed for the fiber optics being done on Wolf, it seems like it's being laid at the ground level and that being buried. Am I wrong on that? Councillor Holton, you have.
So my understanding is, wherever bell lines are underground, then they got fiber optic lines going underground. So wherever there's a belt on the poles, they could latch onto the poles, but if not, they couldn't use high poles, so they had to bury it. That's my understanding from talking to guys.
Councillor CEO, is that your understanding as well?
Yes, Madam Mayor. So in working with our public works foreman on Wolf, that is indeed the fact that where they have to bury the lines, they're being buried, but for the most part, they will be utilizing the belt pools as long as they can.
Okay. Okay, and thank you very much. It does look like a detailed report. I wish there was more that could be reported on at this point on the Wolf Island before. But we don't have information at this point, but we will have further comment on that later on. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Down there, Deputy Mayor Saunders.
Thank you, Member. I just noticed in the report, it talks about the introduction of Mason Pike as a new deputy fire chief. Chief, I don't know if you can comment on that one. I just think if I'm reading it properly, I think it'd be great to have him introduced to council.
Do we have Chief Hawkins on the line? He would be the proper one to speak to that.
I've got Chief Hawkins here. Hang on for 1 second. I'll pass my computer over.
Did you? See if you can get me.
Morning,
Hello
Chief.
there. I'm having trouble getting on my computer. It won't open up the Zoom.
Things happen.
So what did,
Regarding Mason Pike being the new deputy chief, would you like to give an introduction on that? Is Tom Berry retired now or?
no, Tom hasn't retired yet. But Mason is willing to come on as deputy chief and take over as chief for me. And I would like to recommend that you guys agree on that so that we can go forward. So within the next probably couple of years, I will probably step away.
Thank you very much. Any further questions on that from council? Seeing none, thank you for the elaboration.
All right.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Carried.
Motion carried.
Now, action items required. We have the Eastern
No,
Ontario.
no, no, no,
Oh,
sorry, 2025 budget. Yeah,
Oh, we
forget
got,
that.
oh my gosh. That, we don't want to miss that one. We have the budget of 2025 draft budget presentation, December the 9th, 2024. Final version.
Just bear with me here while I get the. Here you go, Jess.
Now we will refer to the treasurer, I believe. Yes, do we have a motion on the floor to get it on the floor?
Moved by Deputy Mayor Saunders, second by Councillor Halton, that council adopt the 2025 budget as presented and or amended. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So yeah, third presentation on budget. Today should hopefully be a little bit of a shorter presentation. My primary focus is just gonna be on the first 15 to 20 slides. There's for you, yeah. Yeah, perfect. Sorry, yeah, so the focus on the first 15 to 20 slides, I did include updated budget slides for all the departments, so if anyone in the public wanted to look, they would have that updated information. But the focus today is mainly going to be on the changes we had since last budget presentation. A couple things to note, at the last council meeting, I was given directions on items to move and take out. If you read through the slides, you'll notice that that wasn't entirely followed 100%. The reason for this is because we updated the NPAC assessment values. With that, it gave us a little bit more room in the budget where we're at for spending. So while we go through, I will make sure to point out anywhere where, you know, I might have done something different than what was directed. And again, this is just mainly just bringing in that new information and making sure we kind of got staff recommendations with it. If you recall in the first meeting, I did kind of account for some of it. I was a little bit conservative in my estimates. I wanted to make sure when we had the final values, the tax rate didn't go up, but it just went down more than I thought it would. So again, that's kind of what's going on there, and I'll make sure to point that out as I go. So kind of starting off, we're just gonna go department by department. These slides basically just show the changes we made. Does that increase taxation? Does it decrease? Or does it make no change at all? So the first piece is the removal of the strategic plan from the budget. We originally had $20,000 towards that. There was a question if it was legislatively required. That did not appear to be the case. So we have removed it from the budget this year. The second piece, and we'll kind of see this spread across the different departments, we have the removal of the Keyless Fob capital project. The admin portion we see here is $12,050. So ultimately, looking at the admin department, that we see a decrease of $32,050. As we go through, and again, we're going to just do one slide for each department. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand and I'll answer them as I go. Barring no questions, moving on to the next slide, we have the emergency management. So with this slide here, we discussed based on our budget, the decrease in the cost billed to us by OPP resulted in $56,000 of savings. As discussed, Wolf Island, I was directed to move that money towards a reserve for the official plan, which would be 70% of it. where Howe Island wanted the money to be directed towards roads. Just since the general budget, all those departments are split 70-30, to make sure this split happened, it's all going to reserves. And then coming out of reserves, for Howe Island. So the Wolf Island will be put away, the Howe Island, you'll see it go into reserves here, and then you'll see it come back out on the Howe Road Department. Again, so this change has no impact on taxation, just reflecting the cost savings, and where those are going in the deed. The planning, we have here is the removal of the official plan from the budget. So in the original draft of the budget that was presented, we had 100,000 coming from the wind reserve, so that is no longer happening. But then that's offset by the $100,000 of costs that we had in the budget. Overall, there'd be no taxation impact there. Wolf Roads, again, this is somewhat reflected just from updated impact assessment values, but just as we had a little more room to work with. Again, with the wind reserve, we are using the fund capital projects, but there is a general sentiment of spending less of it and saving what we can for what we might need for future capital projects. So here we decrease what we're pulling from the wind reserve, which had a $20,000 impact on increasing taxation. Moving on to the next slide. Senior housing, it wasn't in the budget this year, and I confirmed it wasn't in last year, so we have a transfer to reserve for that department to fund a generator for a future purchase. That's now reflected in the senior housing budget. Howe Fire, we have the removal of the keyless fob. Again, that was removed across the board, and this decreases the budget by $23,353. Howe Ferry, again, removal of the fob. This one, there would be potential MTO funding, so both the expense and revenue taken out, but the net impact is $657 in taxation savings. Howe Roads, this slide probably has the most changes going on it. So just starting off the top, we removed the calming signs from the budget. That was around $6,000, or was $6,000. We have the transfer from reserves, the OPP savings. Again, emergency management, we saw that money go into reserves and it's coming back out right again. In the original budget, we had a reserve transfer for the trailer. The reserve transfer appeared in both the roads and the waste budget. So just based on this budget, we wouldn't be transferring from reserves for a purchase of the trailer. So that's why that piece is coming out there. Right below, that leads me to the next point. We removed the trailer, removed the keyless fob, and then we added Baseline Road, just under $80,000. So ultimately, with these changes, there's a $50,000 increase. And like I said, council direction at the last council meeting was to also remove the snow plow and the wood chipper. In this budget, those amounts were still left in. If you'd like to hear more, basically management had a discussion after the meeting and using with the updated impact values, had a discussion, you know, are these items needed? I'm sure Chief Quinn would be more than happy to kind of go through, but basically staff's just making a recommendation that, you know, these items are needed for the operations, especially to, you know, clearing bush and stuff, to have the wood chipper on site, would have a positive impact for the department. So again, just to make clear, that's kind of going a little contradictory what council said, but those were kind of the reasons why they weren't taken out.
Okay, and because it is contradictory and we spoke about it before, and
Yeah.
I'd like to go around to the council again, because council is the ultimate decider on that. So Councillor Ackley.
Yeah, I'm actually for it. The chipper I'm not 100% thrilled with, but we do need it now that I've had a chat with our Mike Quinn there, and same with the truck. The truck is gonna replace will be a backup plow truck. So we do have a backup now, because we don't have any other real source other than going to Wolf Island and borrowing one of their trucks. So I was under the understanding before that it was just a 1/2-ton truck, and now it's really a 5-ton truck with we'll have some sort of blade on the front of it. So I totally approve of it.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. I thank staff for making the appropriate changes and using their judgment as the best way to spend the dollars. So thank you for your work.
Okay, Councillor Holton.
Yeah, again, I mean, I think it's fantastic. Staff was able to work together and bring it in at this. Hopefully, everybody's happy.
Councillor Jablonski.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. for the fact that staff pushed back a little bit must mean they really want this equipment. So I lend myself their thinking. Let's get what they need.
Okay, and I'm happy because you know that I was supportive of it the first time around, so I'm glad to see that you have the equipment that you need. I trust your judgment.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. Always good to hear when everyone's happy. The desired outcome. So, yep, that covers roads. We'll move on to the next department. Recycling, again, removal of the Amnesty Day, where we'd have a day where people would drop off items of waste to be removed. I think one thing to point anyways, just for clarification, this original 6,000 probably should have been part of the waste budget, but it was budgeted here, so that's why we're taking it out of recycling. Again, decrease in taxation of 6,000. Here, and again, there's an extra slide for waste, just because I wanted to make things clear just with all discussions. This slide just shows that doing it contracted for the year 2025 is about $1,163 less than doing it in-house. Just wanted to make sure that was clear. Just on the next slide, when we had the trailer, we were funding the portion of the trailer through a reserve. So since we're taking that out, the increase by taxation is $9,000. I just wanted to make sure it was clear, that's not because the contracted cost $9,000 more. Management's perspective is just to use reserves for strategic or capital purposes. We wouldn't use it just for operating costs. So just if that's all clear there. Culture and rec, and through you, Madam Mayor, this might be another thing to be voted on. I realized after we got through, I guess somehow we discussed voting on increasing the allocation for the community groups. Based on the presentation and councilors' comments in this budget, I went ahead and added the additional $440. With that being said, it is council's decision. So if you wanted to discuss, again, based on the two presentations we had, 2,000 for the Howe Island Garden Buds and 1,500 for the Bond Smart. The original draft budget only had $3,060, where the two together would be 3,500.
Okay, Councillor Ackley,
No, I'm in favor.
Councillor Saunders,
In favor.
Councillor Halton,
Oh, I'm in favor of that.
Councillor Jablonski.
In favor.
I am as well.
Yeah,
Thank
perfect.
you.
Thank you. All right. All right. So that kind of goes through all the changes. This slide, again, just kind of summarizes the taxation impact for each department for the changes. So ultimately, we do have more raised by taxation than we left. Again, that's impacted by the impact assessment values. At about 17,000 for Wolf and 19,000 or just under 20,000 for Howe. Here again, just to kind of explain some of that. Here's for 2025 what our weighted assessment is from impact. Overall, it was a $9 million increase, so that came in a little bit larger than expected. I think some of that too is to understand with impact, we have a lot of building permit activity after COVID. The change in value is based on occupancy date, so some of those projects we may not had a lot of work in the year, but we had occupancy, so the assessment value would increase. Moving on, oh, yeah.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I didn't realize we had almost $600 million worth of assessed value.
Yeah,
I'm not questioning your number.
Yeah.
I had no idea it was that large.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So yeah, and just to clarify too, the set by the county, there's also ratios, for example, commercial, we don't tax the full 100% assessment value. So I think I can give me 1 second. Sorry, my computer just went to sleep, but I can give you the data numbers. But yes, yeah, there. That is our assessment value, and which is good to see, and good to see it going up, because the more assessment we have, it does, again, we saw here, it does gives us more room to raise money by tax without, increasing it for the average taxpayer.
Okay, and on that note, the impact value, is it up to the year 2020? It's just, or what year is it at?
So through you, Madam Mayor, so there still hasn't been, I guess, an overall change in assessment value since 2016. They're very well behind. As I said in the first council meeting, this change in value is to kind of reflect construction or changes of the house, but those changes in values are still based on the 2016 numbers. So if someone built a garage, they assess the value, but it's based on 2016. Again, from what I've heard, and it seems to be changing a lot. I don't know in the next year or two if they will kind of push through the new updated assessment values. I guess one thing to know, just so council's aware, when we talk about our taxation increase, I base it on the average assessment. So again, when we get to that point, just because we're basing our budget based on what we need to raise by tax and what we do by per property, the increase in assessment value doesn't necessarily increase the taxation percentage, right? We have our needs and it's kind of calculated based on the assessment values that we have. So if once we do get new assessment values, I'll be more than happy to put through a report and kind of explain everything thoroughly and have some things up, but
Okay,
yeah.
just since you brought up the average piece.
Yeah.
The average between Howe Island and the average of Wolf Island. Do you
Yeah,
have that figure at this point, or do you want to come to it later? Because I didn't find it in your budget. You just referred to it, but I didn't see the actual figure.
yeah, so. Currently right now, there is a little bit of a difference. So I have the average assessment value is around 332,000 for Wolf, and it's 540,000 for Howe Island.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Member.
Deputy Mayor. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for raising the question, because this still confuses me. This 2016 impact's been around reassessing properties. I get a new assessment value, and so I'm confused as to what I'm actually getting assessed at, or what numbers being used. I think a lot of people are.
Yeah, so basically, as it stands now, through you, Madam Mayor, when they have the 2016 value, that's where they kind of assess what's, the value of the property. When a new property is constructed, they're still basing it on like the model they had for 2016. So let's say, for example, in 2026, they updated it. At that point, everyone's assessment value will change. But it kind of depends how people's change. Like, for example, if we're just talking about tax rates, if let's say, keeps things simple, we had $1 million of assessment value and we needed to raise 100,000 by taxation, our tax rate would be 10% with 100,000. If everyone's property values doubled, so let's say we have $2 million of assessment value, our tax rate, we still need to raise 100,000, but our tax rate will be 5%. So when we're looking at the budget, there's always the change. Basically, there's assessment value moving, and there's also the raise by taxation, what we need as the township to operate. Those two pieces are moving, which is why, again, in that situation, your tax rate might go in half, but you as an owner, if you're one person, you'd still be paying the same to the township. So again, it is kind of confusing. It's not the most simple thing. I definitely, in the year where we actually get updated assessment values, I'll come with a report and examples and explaining things. Just because I know for the resident, right, they want to make sure they're paying the right taxation. And I know for myself, I'm trying my best to explain it, but I'm usually also more of a visual person. So if that makes sense, kind of the relationship between assessment value and taxation.
Deputy Mayor?
Are you sure you weren't a lawyer? What I hear is what I hear and what I feel personally is I'm afraid when this assessment thing changes, my taxes are gonna go through the roof. What you're telling me is the tax change would be based on what the requirement is for funding, not necessarily what the assessment value. So if my assessment value doubles, my taxes are not gonna double. And that's a yes or no question.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So again, it's relative to what people go up to, but in that situation, right, you're not gonna be paying the same, like tax rate on your bill, just because your assessment value goes up, we're not gonna give you the same tax rate. That tax rate needs to get adjusted. So again, since everyone goes up, it's kind of, if your property is now proportionally worth more than other people on the island, when it gets reassessed, you pay more taxes, but all things considered equal, if you had two properties, they both go up by the same amount and you pay the same taxes as the year before, barring no increase on the township side.
Thank you for the yes or no answer.
So is it fair to say then, when this magical occurrence happens at the provincial level,
Yep.
that we may have a very low increase in our budget required on paper that year, but we'll still have the same amount of money coming in proportionally speaking.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So how I present the tax, I present it as a taxation increase. So I'm looking at the tax rate times assessment value, what that dollar value is compared to what that dollar value is this year and the percentage change between those. So for example, if the actual tax rate that we have on the budget, for example, decreased by half, I would still present it, here's the end real factors, what the taxation increase was for a resident on the township. So basically I present it so regardless of what the assessment value changes, we kind of have accurate information on what the actual impact is, which I think is most important.
So the intention is not to have a newfound pot of money
Yeah,
for us?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't see Councillor Jablonski. I haven't heard from you, so I assume you haven't got a question on this.
No, I'm fine. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, I will continue. So this is kind of the key slide. So even with these changes, we'll start with Wolf Island. The township portion did go down a little bit to 5.58% for the for taxation increase. The average household, this would be equivalent to $117.08. We'll just keep Wolf Island. So when we include the county in education, it comes in at 4.65%. Just to kind of make things clear, with the county on their budget, it was a 5.79% tax rate increase. For them, again, not to go down to the weeds assessment value, that's for the county as a whole. They take into account all the different lower tier municipalities. And another thing to account for here is education has remained constant. They haven't increased it. I don't know the exact many years, but at least for the last, I think, 4 or 5 years, education has stayed constant. So the education rate hasn't increased. The only additional money we give to them is if we have more assessment value. So that's kind of why if we include the 5.79 from the county plus the education, why the overall comes in a little bit lower. Howe Island taxation increase is a little bit higher. I think it was 5% on the original budget. So adding the additional roads and keeping in the couple items, it does work out to 5.20%. With that, the average increase for the household will be $146. Again, the taxation increase is a little bit lower, but the Howe Island residents are paying more than Wolf. That just comes into the average assessment value. It's higher on Howe Island. So basically, based on the higher assessment value times the increase, you'll see more of an impact. Overall, it's 4.25% increase, including county and education, or on average $203.07.
Okay,
What's the cost? Yeah, very fast.
I'm sorry, we're in the middle of the meeting right now.
300.
Okay.
100 for a second.
All right. Our councillor is all clear on this piece. Councillor Ackley?
Yep, no.
Deputy Mayor Saunders?
Thank you.
Councillor Holton?
Yeah.
Councillor Jablonski?
Clear the bell.
Okay, no, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just to kind of go through, the rest of the slides are very similar to the first draft. They have all been updated to reflect these new numbers. Just to save us the time though, I don't think we have another 6 hours, so today, again, the slides are all available. They've all been updated. Assuming council has reviewed beforehand, if there's any questions on those slides, I'd be happy to answer them. But as far as the presentation, it is here. Well, I'm going to wrap it today.
Okay. So we're going to skip past the impacts on the reserves.
Oh, sorry, actually, through you, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
That one did get updated as well, so thank you. So overall, I think the biggest thing you will see here, and my apologies, so I realized the planning reserve should have 39,000 for the official plan, so I guess mental math to add that. But otherwise, the other biggest change that we're seeing here is the Wolf Wind is up to $182,000. That's what we're keeping from the $645,000 allocation, which leads us based on January 1st at that time. So it'd be $655,000 or $665,000.
665.
665. Okay, thank you. So again, with this budget, we did use from reserves ultimately, again. I think a strategic purpose is to try to, at this point, not draw on the reserves during the budget as much. Again, just as we look to the asset management plan, as we get that finalized next year, and for any things that pop up. We just want to make sure as a township that we have the funds available to make sure that we are able to operate on an ongoing basis. And again, limit, with the exception that we pursue major capital projects, limit the use of debt. To make sure that we could fund that in-house. With that, if councilors are looking for an updated one, I can bring it to January, or I can send it to councilors after the meeting that can send us a table updated. If that'd be helpful for you.
That would be good.
Yeah, no impact there.
I think we have a question from Deputy Mayor
Yeah.
Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. General question more than anything else. On the debt page, you've decreased interest charges by $3,100. Is that something you've actively done, or is that just a reflection of lower payments?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, I cannot take credit for that. That's just because we have a couple loans finishing up. Yeah, so that's mainly the increase there. We have a loan finished in 24 and then one finishing in 25.
And second general question is, again, education for me, the development charges reserve of, it will be 378,000. As a general question, what can those dollars be used for?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So I believe back, I want to say it was the summer 2021, we had a study completed by Watson and Associates. And based on that study, they dictated what capital projects could be used to collect development charges. For example, I know that one that we'd potentially be looking at using is the bypass road on Wolf Island. That was part of the study. There is some general use for road repair that can be used. That one again, basically with the development charges, it has to be related to growth. So for example, if we had a bunch of buildings on a road we already had, and because of that, we'd assume, there'd be wear and tear that we need to use the development charges, we could. Again, I think at this point, we will look to kind of use those funds. It's just kind of making sure that we're planning it out and using it for the appropriate projects.
Thank you.
And I have a question as well for the CAO, and it's regarding, since you mentioned the bypass road for Wolf Island. With our previous CAO, and that I was under the impression that it was going to be a very simplified road and moving forward, so I'd like to have a bit of an update on that if you could.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So I've worked with our Public Works foreman on Wolf Island this year. They were going to do some work up there. They were going to clear it out and just do a rough grading. But from my understanding, the majority of it was underwater for the better part of the year, and they couldn't actually get on it and do anything. So I know he was looking to do some work on it with regards to the gravel and stuff. So we put additional gravel in the 2025 budget, but it is an ongoing project.
And on that note, then, since it's been underwater for most of the year, do we need to have an engineer's type of report? Would that be prudent before we make too big of an investment and find out we have a major problem?
Through you, Madam Mayor, certainly I can follow up with our Public Works foreman on that and see what their best recommendation is. It could just simply mean putting some culverts and stuff in there to allow the drainage, but I will certainly have that conversation.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, so no further questions. We all look forward to the reserve update report from you. I have one question though regarding the obligatory reserves, and that is regarding what we call the gas tax, which is community foundation tax now, and it seems to have significantly decreased.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So, basically, we have a couple years allocation that hasn't been used. And that's kind of all being this year, the decrease that's being directed towards the roads work. So right now that is an allocation of funding we receive every year. And it's again, kind of for the kind of core infrastructure capital projects. With the budget, again, I think especially on both Howe and Wolf, what we're seeing for roads. I wouldn't necessarily say is a normal year, so using kind of the funding that we had in the obligatory reserve plus some of this year's allocation to get some of that road work done. Again, I think for the township too, just with what we kind of prioritize in spending on roads, the funds need to be used. And it's a method again to try to keep a reasonable tax rate for the residents as well. So that's why it was utilized this year.
Okay, and I was under the impression that it was utilized for the partial effort to repave Marysville in lieu of the new boat arriving in and that, and it didn't necessarily produce the exact results that the previous CEO was hoping for in that, but that's an area that remains a bit of a challenge. That's so good to know that it's being used appropriately for roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yes. No worries.
Okay. Okay, no further questions from council on any part of the budget at this point in time? Am I correct in that? Oh, I have Chief Quinn would like to say something, yes?
Through you, Madam Mayor, and I just think in fairness to the council, in terms of clarifying, when we talk about the chipper. So let's circle back to that if you don't. It's important to know what we're not talking about. We're not talking about one of the large industrial tow behind full engine. We don't want that headache of having that piece of equipment, especially another engine. We are talking about a smaller 3-point hitch that would go on the back of the Massey tractor. And for the purposes of just when we're brushing out some of the sumac and just the smaller bramble, instead of having to haul it away, we'll just chip it at the location and put it back into the ditch. So that's just to really clarify that. I think that's important for the residents to know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's one slide that you would normally come up to in 2025 budget general admin. And on that, it still has listed the capital expense of the key list for $12,050.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So that's just an error on the PowerPoint and not with the numbers. The numbers are fine. My apologies. I will say having the 3 back-to-back budget meetings.
I've been busy.
Yeah, I've been busy. So thank you for pointing it out. I think too, just again, I can again for the next council meeting to just republish these slides with those updates, just to make sure that the residents have an accurate version. So I do appreciate you pointing them out though, because I do want to make sure the correct information is out there.
This is it. The public deserves to know the most accurate,
Yes.
and I really appreciate how our questions are being answered and how it's laid out. It seems to be very understandable.
Perfect. Thank you. I
Which is
appreciate
muchly
it.
appreciated. Thank you. Okay. So, Counselor Jablonski, since I can't see you, are there any questions?
I can see you, Madam Mayor. No questions, thank you.
Okay. No, we had to downsize all the visuals and that to get the budget up on the transfer. And you'll probably update the 2025 Wolf Roads where the revenues from government transfers seems to be much lower. It was $204,728 and 24 and down to $151,302
Let me just have a
in
look at that.
2025, and it just sort of caught my attention.
What page was that on?
That's on 2025 budget dash Wolf dash
Yeah.
roads. and it was further down in the slide deck than where we left off at.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Mayor, and I can go there, this was discussed, so this one hasn't,
split.
changed since the first meeting, but I'd be more than happy to just quickly discuss it again.
Yeah, maybe I've forgotten what the.
Yeah, no worries, I there's a lot of moving numbers to keep track of, so. Yeah, so with the government transfers, this was just two pieces. The one is there was a decrease in the OSIP allocation, so that's specifically what that government transfer is. The other factor is just making sure the split is 70-30 between Wolf and Howe Island. That was just a bit of an adjustment done this year, so it resulted in a little bit more of a decrease.
Okay, thank you very much.
No worries.
Okay. Okay, I think we would probably report on this.
Yeah, and through you, Madam Mayor, so if you do notice anything specific with the presentation, again, that in January, I can again just retouch the slides, assuming that there's no changes. Be more than happy to send me an email and I'll make sure those are reflected.
Thank you very much.
So the motion on the table is that council adopt the 2025 budget as presented. Any further discussion?
We can't see Councillor Jablonski, can you?
No further discussion this side, thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Yes. Yay, that's great.
And that the $1 million question that we can answer to our constituents is percentage increase is,
Oh, sorry, it's you're putting me on the spot here. It's 5
65.
Yeah, it depends which one.
Give them the overall.
Yeah, the overall,
specific, because they'll be asking that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4.65.
4.65 for Wolf and 4.25 for Howe Island.
Okay, and that should answer everybody's question on that. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, now we continue on to action items. Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus calling for investment in municipal infrastructure for Eastern Ontario's small and rural communities. And it's a long motion. I'll hand it back to the CEO.
Thank you. Bear with me, please.
No problem.
One moment. And
Madam Mayor, is there a way of waiting the reading of the entire procedure? Is there a way of doing that or just the whole thing at the beginning?
I think that because we only have the one motion, I think it's in the interest to just have it read through so that anybody listening and it's on the record, and that is what the motion actually was.
Sorry, my question was, is there a procedure where that, not necessarily in this case, but where we can actually waive the reading of those?
I'll direct that to the clerk. Is there an actual
thank you
procedure?
through you, Madam Mayor. If the majority of council wishes to forego the reading, certainly staff can be directed for that, going forward.
Okay, so we have that in procedure, right? Okay. So, since you've raised it, would you like to make a motion that this not be read?
No, thank you for asking. I'm good with reading.
Okay.
So bear with me, I just try to find it. Moved by Councillor Twonky, second by Councillor Ackley. Whereas Eastern Ontario's small rural municipalities face insurmountable challenges to fund both new growth-related infrastructure and ongoing maintenance of their capital assets, including local roads and bridges, clean water, wastewater, waste facilities, and municipally owned buildings, including recreational facilities and libraries. And whereas the Federation of Canadian Municipalities has calculated that municipal governments across Canada are responsible for approximately 60% of public infrastructure that supports our economy and quality of life, but only receive 10 cents on every tax dollar. And whereas the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus regions capital infrastructure deficit has increased by 58% since 2011 and is now at 6 billion and growing. And whereas in 2018, the Ontario government mandated all Ontario municipalities to develop and fully fund capital asset management plans by July 2025. And whereas the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus has released a regional municipal infrastructure policy paper showing key infrastructure data, opportunities and challenges in small rural municipalities across Eastern Ontario. And whereas Eastern Ontario, it's a growing economy that can grow more with sustainable, innovative infrastructure partnership and investment from federal and Ontario governments. And whereas the infrastructure deficit for small rural municipalities cannot be adequately addressed through property tax revenue, restricted municipal borrowing capacity, and municipalities' limited ability to generate revenue. And whereas small rural taxpayers cannot afford dramatic increases to pay for the current and future infrastructure, and I think I'm missing a piece here, just bear with me. Okay, sorry, no, I just want to make sure I was missing anything. Now therefore be it resolved that the Township of Frontenac Islands joins the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in calling on the federal and Ontario governments to immediately and sustainably partner with municipal governments by investing in both the new and ongoing maintenance and repairs of municipal infrastructure in Eastern Ontario small rural municipalities, and that federal and Ontario governments immediately review data and work together to implement solutions based on the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus Municipal Infrastructure Policy Paper in partnership with small rural municipalities. And finally, that this resolution be forwarded to the Honorable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, the Honorable Sean Fraser, Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities of Canada, the Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honorable King Surma, Ontario Minister of Infrastructure, the Honorable Paul Calandra, Ontario Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honorable Lisa Thompson, Ontario Minister of Rural Affairs, the Honorable Peter, I apologize, I'm going to butcher that one.
Flanagan.
Thank you. Ontario Minister of Finance, the Ontario Primate Secura, Ontario Minister of Transportation, the Honorable Victor Fedeli, Ontario Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, Mark Gerritsen, MP, Ted Sue, NPP, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, Rural Ontario Municipal Corporation, and the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus.
Okay, so it's on the table. Any discussion, Councillor
I
Ackley?
don't have any comments.
Okay, Councillor Saunders? Or Deputy Mayor Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. It just points out the important work that the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus is doing to try and represent all of Eastern Ontario, so I would fully support this.
Councillor Holton?
Yeah, I think it's a great thing to support. I do think in the future, we do need to figure out how to do a Reader's Digest of what's here. It's already here, everybody can read it. It takes a long time to go through it, but I agree with this one.
Councillor Jablonski?
Fully agree with this.
Okay. And thank you. I believe this also stretches back to the point made at the previous council meeting on our designation for rural, because while this is supportive of rural, currently we are considered urban in the Frontenac Islands, so we've got to get that clarified to make sure that we actually receive the benefit from this. And that is an ongoing project that I hope CEO and the rest are moving forward on, and certainly should not be something that isn't corrected within a timely manner, as in within both governments. All right, thank you very much.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Favor.
Carrie,
Thank you.
now we're at public question period. Do we have any members of the public that wish to ask about anything that's on the agenda? How many members of the public do we have? No, there was one. We're just sorting that out. Okay, are there any members of the public? If so, put up your hand, wave so that I can see you. If you want to speak. I'm seeing none. If any of you want to speak, unmute yourself and let me know, state your name and your address. Okay, hearing none. Doesn't look like we have anybody from the public that wishes to speak today. Thank you. Now, we have a statement by members. Councillor Acton.
Oh, I'd just like to say, staff has done a great job getting the budget done, and we're, again, I think we're 3-4 months way better than last year, way better. Keep the job going.
Councillor, Deputy Mayor Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. A question through you to the CEO. Staff last year presented this document, which was a guiding document for us in terms of establishing priorities and when we can expect things to be done. This is, I think, a reflection on all of us. We've kind of fallen off the track in terms of following it really closely or not reading it. So my question through you, Madam Mayor, to the CEO would be, when can we produce this type of document or plan for 2025, given that we now have a budget and staffing agreement system?
Okay, so that's more of an administrative question than a statement by member. Could you give us the title of that particular document that you're looking at?
2024 work plan.
2024 work plan for public works?
No.
No,
For our.
Ron Atkins, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. Certainly, hopefully get, staff together and, update this one. And then we can carry it forward. So probably I would estimate February, I'm gonna say, of 2025 will, endeavor to bring the new updated work plan and work plan for 2025 to council for approval.
I just saw this.
All right, thank you. Councillor Holton.
Just the same thing, I'd like to congratulate staff on a wonderful budget, and we're starting to see figures from neighboring townships. We've come in way under. I don't know how you did it. It's amazing. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jablonski.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So echo the same sentiments from the other councilors. Great job by staff in getting this budget done before the calendar year. That's a first. Really pleased to be part of that. It's great to see it done. And overall, yeah, another year's ending up now, and I guess we're going to be starting our 2025 session. I hope it gets off to a great start for all of us.
Okay. And I'd like to also offer my thanks for the diligence that's gone through this budget. It's always going to be challenging, but it was less challenging this year than it has been, not just because of funding. I also want to point out that yesterday there was a public meeting held on Wolf Island, and that it was initially I had hoped that it'd be a special council meeting to be held, and that, but it was not convenient for some of the councillors, so it continued on as a public meeting. That it was very helpful in the communication. It was well attended, well over 100 people, and Ted Shu's office also had a representative there who was also reporting back to Mark Harrison's office. Fortunately, the Ministry of Transportation could not attend. There was a lot of good suggestions. One in particular that caught my attention, and that had been mentioned to me actually before, was the use of 511, because that updates any roads in Ontario. And when there's a ferry issue, seems like it should be on 511. The problems that we had with communication during the more recent Wolf Islander 4 incident and previous on the weekend when there were challenges, it seems like a reasonable piece that we press MTO to get the communication at least on 511. It was also clarified to the public and that it's the CAO is responsible for the public announcements, but she can only announce what accurate information she has from MTO. And in this most recent crisis, and that it was actually CBC that got the information first from MTO, and we passed it on as quick as we could. And clarification was given to the community of the 911 services by Chief Hawkins, who was able to attend. And in the future, when we have that challenge, just it would help to lay people. There was also a point about making sure that there's communication regarding the school board's plans. We were fortunate that most of the kids were not on the dock in Kingston because of the poor weather, and that apparently there were a few in that, but not the big school buses that we usually have in that. And the community wanted to make sure, because it causes them a lot of anxiety in that. Communication issues, and that it was well documented at the meeting that even Ted Shue's office couldn't get communication issues from MTO. It was actually CBC that seemed to get the most headway. With that, the gist of it was to try to get an agreement in that on direction so we could have a more unified voice, as well as any actions. There's people that offered to help people write letters. There's people that have formed their own group that is open to the public, and that they submitted the petition. There are others that have indicated that they phone and write on a regular basis. And I asked in the end for a show of hands for support for the dual ferry service based on the planning study of 2011, which is the most recent planning study we have for the Wolf Island transportation. And overwhelmingly by 80 to 90%, people's hands wanted to have that to be the focus. There was, and that's been well recorded. Actually, one of the islanders was videotaping most of the meeting. I had somebody taking some notes. We didn't have any clerical support, which was unfortunate, but we did have also Ted Shue's office person taking notes. So she shared those notes this morning, and I'll be putting together a few of the notes that I tried to scribble down, as well as the person that's taking the notes. But probably the video of that meeting will be very helpful, but that is not our video, so I leave it to whoever owns that. But basically, the challenges that have occurred very recently with Wolf Islander 4, we have no answers as to when it may or may not come back into service. The MTO, I know the CEO has been reaching out, trying to get information. A public address will be issued via CAO whenever we do have accurate information. The media will probably be the most informed. And that's probably because politicians hate bad press. So the fact that it's gotten to CBC, Global, and CTV, as well as anything else, and that is probably good news for us, because maybe we will get more information. And I do appreciate the challenges of MTO, because they're also working with Transport Canada. And I really appreciate the efforts put forward by the staff and captains of the ferries, and they really did move mountains and respond in a rapid fashion. And especially when we were having to deal, at this point, the MTO is having to deal with Transport Canada and get even permission to use it before. So it's a challenging time. It's a wintry time, and even this morning we had a broken hydraulic line. These things happen. What we don't want to have is long delays and isolation, but be assured that 911 services are always available. The Coast Guard was on standby. If the weather was decent, the orange helicopter could come from Ottawa. But it's never good when we have that long of a 12 and 13-hour delay and people getting home at 2 and 3 in the morning. I'm very sorry for that. But the communication was to be accurate as much as possible. And that's so, I believe it was around 5 o'clock that we got official communication from MTO.
On Friday afternoon.
On Friday afternoon. And we've had no further update from MTO since that point in time. When we get information, I'm sure the CAO will post it on our website. Please subscribe to our website. Those that have that desire to be on subscription, go right ahead. And hopefully we'll also have paper postings as well, was brought up at the meeting yesterday, and the post office and usual places on Wolf. But it has been challenging. So with that, if there's no further statements by members, we'll move to notice of motions. Are there any notice of motions, Councillor Ackley?
No.
Councillor Saunders?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'll be bringing forward a notice of, providing notice of motion, for a motion I'll be bringing forward at the next council meeting, directing, or requesting MTO to provide a feasibility study for the implementation of a second ferry during the peak summer hours to relieve congestion. I think it's time we had a formal response from MTO, and I'll be bringing that resolution forward.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Halton.
No,
Okay, Councillor Jablonski.
No motion, thank you.
Okay, I actually will be bringing a motion forward fairly similar in that to Councillor Saunders, but mine is going to be to solidify council support for the 2011 recommendation of a dual ferry solution for Wolf Island. The challenges of boat lineups is real year round. It's exceptionally real on the summer and the shoulder seasons. But even in the winter time, it's year round. And currently with the system we have of an 80-minute ferry, we can easily have 20 and 25 cars left at peak time. So the study that was independent and paid for by the MTO identified clearly 2 ferries. And I'd like to have that as the position that we aim for, because until they do another study with a better solution, if they ever could come up with it, we definitely need to have it, and it's more than in just the summertime, in my view. So I'll be bringing a separate motion forward, and hopefully there will be support. Okay. Now, announcements. Councillor Ackley, any announcements?
No, none at this.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Saunders.
No, thank you.
Councillor Holton,
no announcements at this time, thanks.
Councillor Jablonski.
No announcements, thank you.
Okay. The only thing that I'll share is I know that there's supposed to be a meeting somewhere on Wolf Island tonight of the Better Ferry Service Group that was responsible for bringing that petition to the legislature. I don't know where the meeting's going to be. It had been held at the hotel, but they seem to not be committing on that. I don't know, but at least you can be aware and contact Jessica Kish or Deborah Singer or Martin Morzette, and that who are 3 that I know of and that are part of that group. Councillor Holton.
Can we just make sure that everybody knows that is not a council sanctioned? There
Oh,
was
absolutely.
much confusion on
Absolutely.
social media over it.
Sure.
That
It is a
this is not, it's a private citizens group.
Yes, they actually posted quite clearly today that to make it quite clear, this is not council sanctioned.
Yeah.
And but this is a community group, and I strongly suspect there's likely going to be more community groups, the same as there has been a community group regarding paramedic services. That's the nature of islands. We have resilient people that take the bull by the horn. So that's that, and we'll go to the bylaws.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Moved by Councillor Jablonski, seconded by Councillor Ackley, that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaws number 044, 045, 048, 049, 050, and 051, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council. If anyone has any questions, I would be glad to answer with regards to the bylaws.
Seeing no questions raised. All those in favor?
In favor.
Carried. Thank you. All right.
Moved by Councillor Jablonski, seconded by Councillor Holton, that the regular meeting of council adjourn.
All those in favor?
In favor.
Motion
Carried.
carried. Thank you very much, everyone.
Adjourned at 11:19, and I hope everybody gets safely back before freezing rain, but I think I hear it chinking on our roof right now. I can hear it. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Nice to be down.